Greetings, everyone, from Lake Wissota in beautiful western Wisconsin, and welcome to another episode of TALK Hidden Chippewa Valley. My name is John Kinville, and I hope you'll join me as I answer some of the questions that people asked about Episode 3, The Last Shift at Leinenkugels. Go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel, and let us begin. Before I get to the first question, I want to give a special shout out to one of my biggest fans. His name is Dennis Eliason, and his son submitted a request to wish you, Dennis, a happy birthday. So thank you for being a fan of the show and for watching all these episodes. Happy birthday. Okay, the first question comes to us from Carissa in Stanley. Thank you, Carissa. Her question is, there doesn't seem to be many people there. How many community members showed up for the final shift? Well, not many. I would say less than a dozen, because it was a Thursday in the afternoon. I had to take a personal day to be able to attend, and there just wasn't that many. Plus, MolsonCoors did a nice job of telling everybody that the brewery was going to close on Friday, even though they didn't work on Fridays. So there wasn't that many people, to answer your question. Question 2, Kyle from Lake Hallie. Hey, Kyle. Thanks again for the question. I appreciate it. He asks, what can you tell us about the CEO of MolsonCoors, and is he a predator-style CEO, or is he a halfway decent guy? Well, Kyle, I can tell you a little bit about the CEO, and in terms of him as a person, I mean, I've never met the man, of course, but I can tell you a little bit about him professionally. So his name is Gavin Hattersley. And Mr. Hattersley, if you read his biography, I would say that he's the type of guy who should be the CEO of MolsonCoors, at least on paper. So I can read off his business experience. Mr. Hattersley, before becoming president and chief executive officer of MolsonCoors, was the chief executive officer of Miller Coors, the U.S. division of MolsonCoors, since September of 2015. Prior to joining Miller Coors, Mr. Hattersley served as the Chief Financial Officer, or CFO, of MolsonCoors from 2012 to 2015. From 2008 to 2012, Mr. Hattersley served as Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Miller Coors. He also served as Senior Vice President of Finance for Miller Brewing Company from 2002 to 2008. He came to Miller Brewing Company from South African Breweries Limited of Johannesburg, South Africa, where he held several financial management positions before becoming Chief Financial Officer in 1999. Prior to joining South African Breweries in 1997, Mr. Hattersley spent almost 10 years with Barlow World Limited in various finance positions. So, Kyle, the first thing that we can deduce from this is that this guy has gone through the company and he knows a lot about brewing and he knows a lot about financials. So that's what the background tells us. Now, in terms of what type of a CEO he is from a personal standpoint and personality standpoint, I really can't say. But what I have done is I have gone and I've watched every YouTube video I can find with Mr. Hattersley, and I've read almost every online interview that he's given. And he is very much a man who has a vision for what he wants MolsonCoors to be. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about that because there's another person who submitted a question about their current business plan. But as a CEO, he makes about $12 million a year, well, at least in 2023. I'm not sure about 2024, which seems like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But when you compare it to, let's say, the Cowboys paying Dak Prescott $80-some million, it really isn't that much in the grand scheme of corporate CEOs. Now, again, I don't know what his 2024 compensation is going to be, but so about $12 million a year. And the other thing his biography tells me is that he knows the Leinenkugel family, like he knows the Leinenkugel brothers. I mean, he's been associated with Miller for a long time, and they've probably had a long professional and quite possibly a personal relationship to a degree. And that might explain why the Leinenkugel brothers felt so blindsided that they were unwilling to talk, is because of that long history. So this is not like he was the CEO of some outside company and they just plugged him in. I mean, he's a homegrown CEO through brewing and these other things. So Kyle, thank you for the question. David from France. Oh, so is it David? So David, what are your thoughts on the closure? Is it related to the strike? Well, locally here in Chippewa, and it was covered in national news, but people still talk about it. But there was a strike. It was the first work stoppage in, at least 20 years, I think. But there was work stoppage in the summer of 2023 in which the workers went on strike. And you can see a picture up here. And it was certainly something that got a buzz here in the community. Now, for those of you who are watching this from out of state, but issues related to unions, both private and public sector, became a big issue back in 2011 after Governor Scott Walker got elected. And then the state's public unions were stripped of collective bargaining powers. And then eventually, there's a lot of fallout from that. And so the topic of unions is a very hot button issue in Wisconsin, even 15 years, 14 years later. So did the strike have a connection to this? Well, of course, everything has a connection to everything. Businesses are not charities. Businesses are there to make money. And the more they can keep for themselves at the top and for the investors, the more that they will do. But to say that the strike was the root cause of the closure, I think, is a little short-sighted. Now, what people will say is, well, when they went on strike, MolsonCoors discovered they could just shift production down to Milwaukee, and they realized they didn't need the brewery in Chippewa Falls. Yeah, that could be the case. But you also have to remember that doesn't necessarily make the union issue, because the folks down at Miller Valley in Milwaukee that's also a union shop. So if MolsonCoors was strictly anti-union, well, they'd have to shut down a lot more of their facilities. So I don't know if it's fair to say at this time that it was the strike that was the issue. Could it have been the nail in the coffin? I don't know, maybe. But I think there's a lot more going on here than just the strike. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely part of the equation, but I don't think it's necessarily the precipitating factor that led to the closure. That's just my sense of it. Sheila from Chippewa Falls. Has there been any MolsonCoors fallout since the announcement and or closure? With a historic brewery, one would think that there might be boycotts, etc. Well, thanks, Sheila. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to put the stock price up here. And this is not a good metric necessarily, because stocks, there's the short-term play on a stock, and then there's the long-term play on a stock. And obviously, I think MolsonCoors has their eyes on two things. They're looking towards the next quarterly earnings report, which is always important, but they're also looking towards long-term factors. Now, since Mr. Hattersley took over as CEO back in September of 2019, you can see where the stock was trading at. And then if you fast forward to today, you can see that the stock has been mostly flat. Now, that doesn't mean that Hattersley has been a failure as CEO. In fact, quite the opposite. He's had to maneuver the company through some pretty serious stuff. We've had COVID-19 with the pandemic. There was also a mass shooting that took place in the Miller Valley facility down in Milwaukee, killing 5. And then we've also had just this rise of the seltzer drinks, the alcoholic seltzers that are out there, and more people moving away from, let's say, beer. And so you put that all together, it's kind of hard to say. You could say that Hattersley has actually done a good job of making sure that the stock hasn't gone down through some pretty precarious moments. Now, if you look closely, you can see, as I call it, the sugar rush. So most of the stories that involve the closing of this brewery focused in on the 157 years, the history of it. But if you look at one of the stories that came out of the UK, I want to say it was the Daily Mail, they used the word, I think, fury in the headline, in which there was outrage and fury by people by Molson Coors shutting down the brewery. I think you have a difference in opinion between the European press and the European culture and the American press and the American culture. I think we've become very desensitized to companies being bought, sold, going out of business. It just becomes part of the American capitalistic system. And I'm a capitalist, but it comes with some pain. I mean, my father lost his job at Uniroyal Goodrich, and my mom lost her job at XMI tie factory because those tie manufacturing were moved to China. But part of it was also the change in fashion. People just don't wear neckties as much as they used to. So there's always a lot more factors in this than one might think. And in terms of this, well, the sugar rush, as I was referring to, you can see that there was a short investor spike because in America, when you announce that you're closing a 157-year-old brewery, you get those who think, oh, we're losing a piece of the past. But then the investor class might go, oh, boy, they're really serious about cutting costs if they're willing to close down a 157-year-old brewery. Now it's time to invest. And I think you get a little bit more of that in America than you do in the European culture, per se. But I don't know. I'm just speculating. From there, let's see. Gina from Eau Claire. Did the Leinenkugel brothers mess this whole thing up when they sold to Miller back in 1988? I know that's a popular talking point that you'll hear in the Chippewa Valley, is that the Leinenkugel brothers got the brewery from their father, Bill, and then they proceeded to sell out to the corporate giant, and that this was inevitable. And that very well could be the case. I tend to come from a different angle, where if you go back to 1988, and if you look at the conditions that the Leinenkugels were facing at that time, that was before the craft beer craze. So essentially, when you walked into a liquor store, or if you went to a bar, you're essentially choosing from similar versions of original and light beer. That was the beer market back in 1988. And at that point, the Leinenkugel family was facing insolvency with the brewery. So Miller swooped in as kind of an angel investor, so to speak. And the Leinenkugel family didn't have a lot of leverage. You know, when you're facing insolvency, you just don't have that leverage. And so Miller came in and they get to write the terms. They're the ones that get to either say, hey, you're going to kind of do it our way. Otherwise, you're going to go out of business. So what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? But I think Miller also came in good faith. You know, Miller came in and nobody thought, at least I don't think a lot of people thought, and I'm pretty sure the Leinenkugel brothers did not really think about this either, that somehow Miller, of all companies, could get bought out. I mean, Miller was top dog, and Anheuser-Busch, top dog. These are big companies. Now, since we can look back and go, wow, well, that was naive to sell out to Miller with having no terms and conditions on the brewery. Well, we don't know that there weren't terms and conditions that were, asked or declined, but Miller was a good faith partner. Miller kept them open. Miller helped with distribution. And then the craft beer craze came. And all of a sudden, the Leinenkugel brothers are thinking, wow, we did the right thing. And I think they did, hindsight being 2020. But then as the craft beer boom came, thus came the larger entities looking to cash in on that. And it became a cash cow, all the microbrews, etc. And all of a sudden, the market got saturated. I think all of this plays into it. I don't think selling to Miller was the issue. It's when Miller gets gobbled up that it becomes an issue. And all of a sudden, this little brewery in Chippewa Falls goes from being a Wisconsin icon to just one of many financial entries on a spreadsheet. Bill from Tomahawk. Hey, greetings from Tomahawk. Hopefully it's not colder than what it is here, Bill. Was the Leinenkugel brothers' offer to purchase the brewery back just lip service to the community, or do you think it was a real play? Well, I suspect it's both. I would suspect it's both. I think, I think they obviously have to put up a fight. How can you not? I mean, people are going to criticize you and throw you under the bus if you don't. But if you haven't met the Leinenkugel family, I think it's a real play. Now, in terms of Jake and Dick, I mean, they're both retired presidents of Jacob Leinenkugel Brewing Company. I don't know if they would necessarily want to be on the day-to-day operations had they bought it back, but I suspect they would have worked together to maybe hand it over to their children to see if they would run it. And who knows what type of agreement that they were looking for. I mean, were they looking for, hey, let us brew some of the custom top-end brands here and we'll see operations? Or was it something more of the fact of, you get to keep everything Leinenkugel, we just want to buy it back and create our own recipes and our own brand? So who knows the real specifics of that? And of course, MolsonCoors didn't even want to enter into a contractual discussion with them, even with a non-disclosure agreement, which tells me that they did not want to create another competitor in that space, which from their vantage point makes a lot of sense, because how are the Leinenkugels going to build another brewery? Well, the marketing's easy. You come from the ashes of being jettisoned by a corporate behemoth. And so, even if you spun that narrative positively, it's going to make Molson Coors look like the villain compared to a new upstart in that brewery house. So I think it's authentic. I know there are some in the community that I've heard that don't think it's authentic, but I do. But was it also lip service? Well, of course. Of course. But I do think it was authentic. Leah from Minocqua. Love Minocqua. I was up there a couple months ago. Fantastic part of the country. And they've got this Minocqua Popcorn Company. And there's this lemon popcorn they have up there. It's delicious. I got to get up there and get some more because my parents want more. Leah asks, was this closure avoidable? What is going to happen to the brewery itself? Well, it was not avoidable according to Molson Coors. Clearly, they shut it down. To them, it's just, and by his own admission, the CEO is adopting this new, what he called premiumization, in which you focus on the premium SKUs and get rid of the rest of the SKUs. And the CEO, Hattersley, has had a lot of success with this in Canada and in Europe, and Leinenkugels appears to be a victim of this strategy. Well, how does that relate to the Chippewa Brewery? Well, the Chippewa Brewery was at its end, mostly, I think, just producing original and light. Well, those are competing products with the Miller and the Coors products that they can live without as a company. And I wouldn't be surprised if Molson Coors phases out original and Leinie's Light and then just sticks with the Summer Shandies and the Honey Weiss and the Berry Weiss and some of those premium brands, and then tries to raise the price to get that specialty item that you're not going to find a similar product for. But do I think it's avoidable? Yeah, I do. I really, really do. And and here's how much. And if Mr. Hattersley, if you're listening to this, which I doubt you are, I mean, why would you? But if anybody from Molson Coors can get this to Mr. Hattersley, this is not a shallow offer. I think this is avoidable. And I also think it's fixable. I think Molson Coors has gotten so big as an entity that they're losing sight of some basic marketing principles. And they've taken a brand that the Leinenkugel brothers got from their father, and they've turned it and made it synonymous with fishing on a dock, with a bear looking over your shoulder, with a minnow bucket, and a cooler full of fish. They did a phenomenal job of building up their beers, and that their beer was an experience. And what I think Molson Coors is doing is they are trying to streamline that vision, which I understand all companies do, but they want to keep that at the same time just selling a couple of beers and to make a fortune off of it. But what you're doing is that you are destroying the value of the brand itself. And I think that if you truly want to maximize premiumization, I think you need to scale back some of the production, get it back into Leinenkugels in Chippewa Falls, or as much of it as you can, and then you use that as part of the reason to increase the price of the beer even higher than what you would normally sell it for. You want to go premiumization? go all in on premiumization. I go all in. And I feel so strongly about it. And I don't have all the financials. And I know that Miller Valley is a monstrosity of a producer. In fact, when both Leinenkugel breweries were closed and they shifted production over to Miller Valley, it only ended up increasing the production of Miller Valley by 1.4%. So the Miller Valley complex is a behemoth. It can easily suck this in, but I think you're running the risk of destroying the actual label itself. And I feel so strongly about it that I'd like to offer something to Mr. Hattersley, and that is this. This is my credit card. And I don't have a lot of money. I don't even have a lot of money on this available, but I'd be willing to spend my own money to bring you to Chippewa Falls. And if it's by private plane, I'll pay for the fuel. We'll put you up in a cobblestone hotel downtown. We'll take you out to Sandbar. We'll take you out to High Shores. Let me show you the town. I'll show you the candy shop. Now, why do I think that they're having branding issues? And let me keep my credit card up here because this is not a hollow offer. And folks who know me know I'm serious. I'm kind of a dork that way. This is not a shallow offer. So I'm going to keep this up here. But here's how bad MolsonCoors' marketing has gotten when it comes to the brand of Leinenkugels. They let Charlie Berens, one of the most popular and viral comedians with young people in the United States, go into the brew house in February of 2024 to film a hilarious episode that's been viewed over 1 million times on just one of the platforms that I watched. And in the same year, watch him go to the Chippewa Falls, Northern Wisconsin State Fair and perform. He also went down to the Leinie Lodge for photo ops and such. And then later in the year, shut down the brewery. I mean, that in itself shows that you might have some marketing holes. And I think Mr. Hattersley knows brewing. I think he knows financials. I think you're not seeing the full picture on the marketing side. Come to Wisconsin. Come to Chippewa Falls. Let me show you how Quick Trip does it. Let me show you how Culver's does it. Let me show you how Festival Foods does it. Menards. There are great Wisconsin companies that can help in terms of the marketing aspect to reach these younger generations that I think you're missing. And I feel so strongly about it. I'll pay for you to come. And I'm not kidding. And I can't afford it. But that's how strongly I feel about it. And it's also how strongly I feel in Mr. Hattersley, because everything I've seen of him, I think this guy's really good. I think he is good. I think he's got good instincts. But I think he's making a very, very short-sighted decision. And if it's a decision that you made personally, Mr. Hattersley, then I guess there's not much we can do about it. But I'm sure you had some people bending your ear on this. But I'm here to tell you it's fixable. You could probably turn around and reopen that place with non-union if that's really the issue, which I don't think it is, by the way. So reach out. You can reach out through my website, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you. I've tried to reach out to Mr. Hattersley through traditional methods, and so far I haven't heard anything back. And why would he talk to me? There's no reason to talk to me, except I have this local YouTube channel. But I'm hopefully I'm speaking for a lot of other people in the community that feel like that this is something that should be continuing. My last question is from Ned from Eagle River. What's your favorite Leinenkugel memory? Well, my current, I don't want to say memory, but just present time. Just present time. I love going down to the Leinie Lodge, grabbing a beer, crossing the bridge, and walking with my wife over to the edge of Duncan Creek, right off of what is known as Pig Alley. It's a trail where they used to run pigs. It's a bike trail now, a walking path, but you can walk down by the drainage pipes from the East Hill where the drain water comes through, and you can walk right down to the edge of Duncan Creek and just sit on the rocks with a nice cold beer. You can lay down, soak up the sun rays, and for those of us Midwesterners, man, how much we need the sun. And so it's such a beautiful thing to do on a gorgeous Saturday or Sunday in Wisconsin. And so currently in my life, those are the memories that mean a lot. My favorite historical memory, however, tied to history, is when I got a chance to meet Bill Leinenkugel. Now, Bill was the father of Jake Dick and John, the three Leinenkugel brothers. And so what happened was I was part of a master's program where I was getting a master's degree in history education. And I was doing it through River Falls, even though I lived here in the city. And so part of our field study was to go to Leinenkugels and as part of our learning of German immigration history. So we toured the hospitality center and went through the brewery. And the head of the Lining Lodge at that time came up to me and said, "Hey, what is your group?" And I said, "Oh, we're a bunch of history teachers. We're going through a master's program." And her eyes got big and said, oh, okay, I got to go. And then she ran off, and I thought, I wonder what that's all about. Well, come to find out, she went to call Bill Leinenkugel. And Bill apparently is enamored with history. So by the time we get out of the brewery, Bill Leinenkugel is sitting in the lodge next to the fireplace, and he stands up and he comes racing over to us. And he's up in his elderly years at this point. This is about 2005. And he treated us as if we were kings in his castle. It was just incredible. To this day, I've never really felt anything like that from somebody, a prominent person in the community. He actually treated me like I was the historical figure in the room, that I was the one that mattered. And all the other teachers felt that too. We sat with him for 2 hours as he was sharing stories, but then he was wanting to know about us. And he told us, he said, "I want to get on that bus with all of you, and I want to go back, and I want to be a teacher." And he was so emphatic about education and teaching and the profession and the calling and business and brewing. And there was no agenda. There was no nothing. And he was very gracious, and he appreciated everything he had in life. And he was a former Marine, and he had been on the island hopping campaigns in the Pacific. And he was in the Battle of Saipan in World War II. And I told him, I said, "Bill, I don't want this to come off as being weird, but you remind me so much of my grandfather, who passed away in 1997. And he smiled and he said, "Well, then I'll be your adopted grandpa." And so I shook his hand, but what a man. So that's my greatest memory, was meeting Bill Leinenkugel. And then from there, also having his granddaughter, Ellie Leinenkugel, in class. She went to Chippewa Falls High School, and she was in my class. And Ellie, he would be so proud of you for everything that you've done in life too. So that's my favorite memory. And with that, folks, I want to thank you all for submitting questions for this episode of Talk Hidden Chippewa Valley with John Kinville. And please remember that together we become witnesses to the past, and we keep their stories alive. And there's a lot of us who have people who work at the brewery who now we have to keep their stories alive. And one of those is this. 2 of the employees that I know for sure are former students of mine, Elizabeth and Luke. And I just want to say that you're in my thoughts. But Elizabeth gave me this. She wanted me to have this. She said, "I was so moved by your episode that I wanted to give you this as a souvenir because I know that you would appreciate it." And Elizabeth, I will. And I do. But this is from the final production run, one of the final beers produced in Chippewa Falls, Leinenkugels Original. And as you can see, for the final run, they put the maiden back on the label, which had been taken off by MolsonCoors. I'm assuming for social sensitivity reasons, which is weird because there was no pressure to really do that. And on the stamp, it says, let's see if I can get you to see that. It says final run. So thank you, Elizabeth, for thinking of me and for giving me that feedback. It really does mean a lot. So until next time, if you like this channel, go ahead and subscribe and give it a like. If you have any more insight, or if you want to share, or if you think I've missed something, or you disagree with my assessment, go ahead and leave that in the comments section below. And until next time, thank you very much.